Hello everyone, and welcome yet again to this episode of Dinner Guide. I am your host, Chef Andy, and today we are going to be particularly focusing on a very simple recipe. I'm going to be showing you how to make some crispy drumsticks with some rosemary infusion, and we'll also be making a very simple potato bake. But before we get to that part, we'll begin by introducing the ingredients before us. So from the front, I've got some salt, two cloves of garlic, and some unsalted butter. I'm also going to be incorporating some curry powder, some paprika powder, some dried oregano, and some Parmesan cheese. You'll also require about 5 drumsticks, some rosemary and some thyme, of course fresh. You'll also require about half a cup of cream, 2 large potatoes peeled and soaked in some water, some milk to make your bake with, some baby spinach, some pepper to crush, and last but not least, some oil to cook with. But before we proceed, we're going to take a very short break, allowing you to freshen up and grab your pens and papers if you're taking notes, and we'll catch you after a very short break. Hello viewers, and welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in, we're about to start a very simple chicken recipe. It's just some very beautifully made chicken that I actually like to make myself at home, and I'm hoping that this recipe will be able to actually influence you to try it yourselves. So we're going to start this very simple process by patting dry our chicken. So I'll just bring that closer to myself, and we're going to proceed to pat that dry with some kitchen towel. Simple as that. Just roll it through some kitchen paper and place in a separate plate. Now this particularly allows for you to make sure that your chicken is completely defrosted, that it's not actually still oozing blood or water. And this particularly is important because you are going to be throwing your chicken in some oil. Very important to make sure that it does not have any liquid on it, because it may actually start to spark up, and of course those big bubbles of oil and water sparking up may actually burn you really bad. So be very vigilant on that. Just to finish that last piece. And also very important to make sure, especially when working with chicken, always try and remove any traces of feathers on your chicken. Sometimes you may actually go out and have chicken served to you with this particular errors that are very easy to avoid. And it's a very simple thing. If you're going to be having a difficulty in cleaning your chicken, have your butcher do it for you and give them the right specifications, and it will save you the stress of having to serve chicken with a bit of feather still attached to it. Or you can just alternatively take a little longer when going through cleaning your chicken pieces, observing one at a time, and this will always give you a very good end result. Now we're going to place this aside very briefly, and we're going to come back to the potatoes. So begin by draining your water, and next up proceed to grab your potato. Very simply slice a very small slice on any of the sides. Remember, that allows for you to get control of your potato. And all you're going to do now is proceed to slice very, very thinly. Making sure to take your time doing so. Remember, your potato bake will take longer if your potato chunks are still too big. So always be vigilant as well to take out the tail bits. And as you can see from the potatoes on the table, almost a perfect cut every time. So my very simple trick to you is take a small slice of your potato out, and this will actually be very much easier to slice. And all you're going to do is proceed with the same thing for the other piece. And of course, if you do have a peeler or probably if you do have a better slicer that can do this a little faster and a little more precise, it will also work. For those of you who may also have a mandolin in possession, you can also use that too. And now, just as you did with the rest, always take the tail bits off, and you can always discard those. Now, to this very simple process, we are going to proceed to combine the mixture that we'll be cooking this in our dish. So we're going to start us off by adding our cream to a bowl. Proceed also to add your milk, making sure to go about half and half in ratio. Add some oil. Proceed to crush in some black peppercorns. And also add in a pinch of salt to season. Add in your curry powder. Small pinch of your paprika powder. And a pinch of your dried oregano. Now for this, you'll probably have to reserve some cheese as well. For this, I'm going to be using some Parmesan cheese, and this is basically just to top our gratin once it goes into the oven. Also, something to mention, always have an oven ready before beginning this stage, because you will actually need your oven to really hit it with quite a bit of oomph, and it will also save you the cooking time. So whisk that together right up until your oil is completely dissolved in the mixture. And now you can start this very simple process by grabbing an oven-proof dish. So this is the one I'm going to be using for this recipe. Drizzle in a bit of olive oil, and using some kitchen towel, just roll that into a small bowl and begin by rubbing the oil on the surface, or rather the bottom of the dish, and proceed to turn while you do the same thing to the sides, and finish by rubbing some over the top. And this will particularly make sure that you don't actually have the mixture stuck to the bowl and making it very hard to wash. It's always a particularly good tip to actually just cover it with a little bit of oil. The mixture will always come out a little easier when washing. Alright, so next up, we're going to proceed to layer up our potato bake. So it's very, very simple. Begin by grabbing a ladle that you will use to scoop your mixture, and begin by adding about a quarter of a ladle full into your dish. Proceed to layer your leaves of your baby spinach, making sure to cover the base of the dish. And of course, begin now to layer in your potatoes, of course taking time to make sure to go around the sides, and always finish at the center. Proceed to add your spinach over the potato. Add your potato right above that once more. And remember, you basically just need to continue doing so right up until you get to the very rim of the bowl, but of course never try to go right above or out of the dish. Once more, potatoes around the sides. And there's actually no issue if you have a bit of a space right in the center. Remember, that always allows for the steam to escape, but you can always cover that with a smaller piece of potato if you're really looking for an even layer. Right, so proceed to finish off the top by topping that with about double the layer of your baby spinach. And you can now proceed to reserve the rest of your potato, and very simply proceed to top the mixture with your liquid. And just right about to the point when you get to the very top, very important hint, I like to use a spoon for this, and all you're going to do is just press down, making sure that the spinach right over the top is also submerged under the liquid. And this also allows for you to push down all the contents in your dish, allowing you to get a nice, beautiful, gradual layering once you take this out of the oven to serve. Right, so our dish is now almost done, but very importantly, we're going to sprinkle over some Parmesan cheese. Of course, always beginning with the sides first. That way you always make sure you have enough to go around. And of course, finish by covering the very center. And you can use the remainder to just fill in some of the gaps. And that is as simple as it is to layer your bake. So this will now go into the oven. We're going to be baking this with both elements running, and we're going to be baking it anywhere between 170 to 190 degrees. Remember, as soon as you gratinate the top, you will also drop the temperature slightly to 160 to allow the potatoes to cook fully. So we're just going to move this into the oven. And I will also proceed to change the ranges in here. So very important to mention, if you're going to be baking something in a dish, you may want to move your rack out of the oven because it always makes it a little harder to take out later on. And you can proceed to slide in your oven tray almost halfway. Move your liquid to the very back of your tray and push all the way back. That way you get the best heat and the best actually you get the best supply of heat in your oven. So that is going to go in for anywhere between 25 to half an hour. Make sure to check your timer, make sure both elements are running, and of course always be vigilant with anything in your oven until it's actually done cooking. Now our potatoes are in. We're now going to go into the next step, which is our chicken. Now just proceed to turn my board around. Right, now you can proceed to grab your chicken at this stage. And remember, we already have a pot of oil on the go. I'm just going to reposition it to the front so that you can be able to see. Right, your oil is hot. Now very simply, we're going to just cook this and allow them to get very crispy. We will take them out, and then I'll take you through the last process of coating them with a bit of the rosemary and the thyme. But for this stage, we're just looking for the crispness of the chicken. So always begin by touching the surface of your oil to make sure it's not too hot. If your oil is very hot, proceed to turn off the gas completely. Allow your oil to cool down, and you can actually add 1 or 2 pieces. That will always help to bring the temperature a little lower. And now just proceed to add all your pieces into the oil. And this should actually proceed to cook right up until the skin is crispy and the chicken pieces are golden brown in color. Now, as you can see, once you turn down your oil completely, the chicken will start to bring down the temperature of the oil, and you can now proceed to turn that back on. And you can allow that to continue cooking until crispy. Very important to mention, always make sure that most of the oil is covering all the pieces of your chicken, and that will always guarantee for a good, beautiful finish. So we're going to take a break now, reconfigure our little setup here, and when we do come back, you will be able to see the finished bake, or the finished potato bake, and we'll also finish up our chicken. So don't touch that dial, we'll be right back. For those of you who missed out on what we were doing before we went on a break, we've just been baking our potato bake, and we're just about ready to finish the dish, but we'll begin by taking this out of the oven. And allow that to rest over your counter, allowing it to cool off very, very briefly. Now next up, we're going to finish off the chicken. So a very, very simple technique. Begin by heating a pan, and very simply begin by stemming your thyme. Proceed to do the same with part of your rosemary, so you can actually break that and just proceed to pull out those beautiful leaves. Right, once done, in a hot pan, proceed to drizzle over some oil and proceed to add your chicken. Now, for those who may have missed out on what we did with the chicken, remember we just threw this in some hot oil and allowed them to cook until golden brown and crispy. Now, all you're going to do is toss that in the oil slightly, and that will basically give it a nice, beautiful, crisp shell. And it also give it a bit of brown and also improve that beautiful color. Now to that we'll proceed to season with some salt and some black peppercorns. And lastly, add your thyme and your rosemary. And proceed to toss in your pan. So this I'm doing at a very, very high heat. And remember, since your chicken is already cooked, you don't need to go anywhere over 4 to 5 minutes to do this process. And right at your 5th minute mark, proceed to turn your heat off completely. And we're going to proceed to move our potato bake first. So I'm just going to grab that off the tray. And we're going to move that onto the plate. And next up, proceed to grab your chicken and begin to arrange your pieces right over the front. Once done, you can simply garnish that with a sprig of rosemary right in the center. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my simple take on crispy drumsticks with rosemary and a very simple potato bake. I hope you've managed to grasp something today, and you probably are going to be trying this out. If not, you probably are going to be missing out quite a bit. I will also recommend that for some of the ingredients that I've used, especially for the potato bake, remember that is not particularly a dish you want to serve with anyone who does not take milk or butter. So be very vigilant on that. I'll also mention it does contain cheese, so you can alternatively avoid the Parmesan cheese and do it without the cheese if cheese is your issue. But apart from that, for the chicken, you can alternatively do that with some beautiful pieces of meat. But remember, meat will probably dry up really quick in the pan. So chicken actually works best for this particular technique. There are different techniques to doing rosemary and meat together, and you can be able to check that out on yourselves. But for now, I will bid you farewell, wishing you a lovely evening, and until the next episode, be blessed and see you soon.